Whispers echoed through the icy halls of Dunstead Keep. The Wolf King of Oakhaven was coming for his tribute. A political marriage forged in desperation, demanding a bride entirely undesirable. He sought a weak, pliant creature to mock. Instead, beneath a heavy, moth-eaten veil, stood a woman who would shatter his entire world. High in the northern tower of Dunstead Keep, where the wind howled like a dying beast through the cracked stone, Rosalind Croft sat perfectly still. Her stepmother, Lady Margaret, paced the small circumference of the room, her silk skirts rustling with agitated energy. "You will keep the veil on, Rosalind. Do you understand me?" Margaret's voice was sharp, a whip cracking in the freezing air. "Lord Rutherford specifically asked for you, the scarred, the hidden, the disgraced daughter of House Croft. If he sees that you are whole, he will assume your father lied. He will assume it is a trap. And a Wolf King does not negotiate when he feels trapped. He slaughters." Rosalind stared straight ahead, the scratchy, heavy gray wool of her mourning dress biting into her collarbones. "I understand, Lady Margaret. Good." Margaret stopped pacing and sneered down at her stepdaughter. For years, the rumor had been cultivated with meticulous care. When Rosalind was 7, a localized fire had broken out in the nursery. Rosalind had emerged completely unharmed, but Margaret, terrified by the girl's striking, otherworldly beauty and the fact that her own daughter, Cecilia, looked plain by comparison, had spread the lie. She told the realm the bastard child had been hideously disfigured. Rosalind was banished to the shadows, forced to wear heavy veils and coarse cloaks, hidden away from visiting lords and potential suitors. Now, that cruel lie was their family's salvation. Gideon Rutherford, the Alpha King of the Oakhaven Pack, had conquered the neighboring territories with ruthless precision. To prevent him from marching on Dunstead, Lord Archibald Croft had sued for peace. Gideon's terms were bizarre but absolute. He did not want gold, nor did he want the beautiful, legitimate daughter Cecilia. He demanded the hidden one, the ugly one. He wanted the monster of Dunstead Keep to serve as his queen. To the Crofts, it was a profound insult, a mockery of their bloodline. To Gideon, it was a strategic move. A disfigured, unwanted bride would have no loyalty to the family that kept her locked away, and she would pose no threat to his court. She would be an invisible pawn. "He will arrive before nightfall," Archibald Croft said, stepping into the dim room. He did not look at Rosalind. He rarely did. "You will be escorted to the courtyard. The Septon will speak the vows. You will nod. You will not speak. You will climb into his carriage, and you will never return to this keep. If you remove that veil before you reach Oakhaven, you doom us all." Rosalind finally turned her head, the thick black netting of her veil swaying gently. "And if he kills me?" "Father?" Archibald's jaw tightened. "Then you will have served House Croft in death better than you ever did in life." Hours later, the ground of the courtyard trembled. Rosalind stood on the cobblestones, the biting autumn chill seeping through her thin leather boots. The heavy veil draped over her head, down to her waist, smelled faintly of mothballs, dried lavender, and the bitter tang of wolfsbane she kept in a small pouch against her chest. The wolfsbane was her own addition. For years, she had felt strange surges of heat beneath her skin, an unnatural sharpening of her senses whenever the full moon rose. She knew she was not entirely human. If a Wolf King caught her scent, he might recognize her as an anomaly, and anomalies were usually executed. The heavy oak gates groaned open. Gideon Rutherford rode at the front of a formidable warband. He was a mountain of a man, clad in dark leather and iron-gray furs. His hair was as black as a raven's wing, falling over a face carved from granite. A jagged, faded scar slashed through his left eyebrow, but it did nothing to diminish the terrifying, raw magnetism of his presence. His eyes, a striking, piercing amber, scanned the courtyard with predator's precision. He did not dismount immediately. He looked down at the gathering, Archibald shivering in his ermine cloak, Margaret looking faintly nauseous, and finally, Rosalind, a small, drab figure draped in a hideous gray shroud. Gideon's lip curled slightly in disgust, though whether it was directed at her or the parents who so eagerly gave her away, Rosalind could not tell. He swung down from his massive destrier. "Lord Rutherford," Archibald greeted, his voice trembling slightly. "We welcome you to Dunstead. The Septon is ready." "Skip the formalities," Gideon rumbled. His voice was deep, scraping against the stones of the courtyard like two pieces of flint. "I have no patience for your false hospitality, Croft. Say the words, 'Give me the girl,' and my army will stay on the eastern side of the river." That is the pact. The ceremony took less than 5 minutes. It was entirely devoid of warmth, music, or joy. Rosalind repeated the ancient, binding vows of the old faith, in a voice barely above a whisper. Gideon's responses were clipped and utterly indifferent. When he reached out to grasp her hand to seal the binding, Rosalind flinched. His palm was calloused, radiating an intense, feverish heat even through her thick wool gloves. Gideon paused for a fraction of a second, his amber eyes narrowing at their joined hands. He tilted his head, breathing in. But the heavy scent of mothballs and the sharp, toxic bite of wolfsbane masked anything else. He dropped her hand abruptly, put her in the carriage. Gideon ordered his second in command, a tall, scarred warrior named Arthur Pendleton. Without a word of goodbye from her father or stepmother, Rosalind was ushered into a dark, iron-reinforced carriage. The doors slammed shut, echoing like the closing of a tomb. As the wheels lurched forward, carrying her away from the only prison she had ever known, Rosalind reached into the folds of her ugly dress and wrapped her fingers around the hilt of a hidden silver stiletto. She was going to the den of the wolves. But she absolutely refused to be their prey. The journey to Oakhaven took 3 agonizing days. The weather turned brutal, plunging the dense northern forests into a premature winter. Sleet battered the wooden roof of the carriage relentlessly. Throughout the journey, Gideon ignored her completely. He rode his horse alongside his men, enduring the freezing rain with supernatural resilience. Rosalind watched him through a tiny crack in the carriage shutters. She observed the way his men deferred to him not out of blind terror, as the rumors suggested, but with a deep, unwavering respect. She watched him give up his own dry cloak to a younger guard who had taken ill on the second night. The action shattered the image of the mindless brute her stepmother had painted. Yet, Rosalind maintained her guard. Survival meant vigilance. On the evening of the 3rd day, the silhouette of Oakhaven Castle emerged from the mist. It was nothing like the damp, decaying stone of Dunstead. Oakhaven was carved directly into the side of a colossal mountain, its dark spires reaching toward the moon, windows glowing with the warm, inviting light of thousands of hearth fires. The carriage rolled into the bustling inner bailey. Men, women, and children of the pack stopped what they were doing to watch the arrival of their alpha's new queen. Rosalind felt their eyes boring into the sides of the carriage. They expected a monster. They expected the Hag of Dunstead. Arthur Pendleton opened the carriage door. "We have arrived, my lady. The Alpha awaits you in the Great Hall." Rosalind stepped out, nearly stumbling as her numb legs gave out, but Arthur caught her arm firmly. "Steady," he murmured, his tone surprisingly gentle. She was led through massive iron doors, down sweeping corridors draped in crimson and gold, until she reached the Alpha's private chambers at the top of the central keep. Arthur left her at the heavy oak door, offering a brief nod before retreating down the spiral stairs. Rosalind stood alone in the quiet corridor. Taking a deep breath, clutching the silver stiletto hidden in her sleeve, she pushed the door open. The chamber was enormous, dominated by a massive stone fireplace where a roaring fire fought back the winter chill. Gideon stood by the hearth, his broad back to her. He had stripped off his wet leather armor, wearing only a loose linen shirt and dark trousers. The firelight cast long, dancing shadows across the heavily muscled contours of his shoulders. "Close the door," he commanded without turning around. Rosalind obeyed, the heavy wood clicking shut with a terrifying finality. Gideon finally turned. He held a goblet of dark wine, his expression unreadable. "You survived the journey. I'll admit, half my men took wagers that Archibald sent me a sickly creature who would perish in the first frost." Rosalind said nothing. She kept her head bowed, the veil concealing everything. Gideon sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He looked exhausted, the weight of his crown clearly resting heavy on his broad shoulders. "Listen to me," he said, stepping closer. The sheer size of him in the enclosed space was suffocating. "I do not care what your face looks like. I do not care about the fire, or the scars, or the pity of your pathetic family. I married you because I needed a queen who would not scheme behind my back for the High Council. You will have a warm bed, plentiful food, and the protection of the Oakhaven pack. In return, you will stay out of my way." He took another step, closing the distance between them until he was merely an arm's length away. "But I will not have my queen walk my halls looking like a frightened ghost hiding beneath a shroud. Take off the veil." Rosalind's heart slammed against her ribs. "If he sees I am unscarred, he will know Archibald broke the terms of the treaty. He might kill me for the deception. My lord." Rosalind spoke for the first time since the ceremony. Her voice was not the hoarse croak of a broken woman, but smooth, melodic, and startlingly steady. "It is not a sight fit for an alpha." Gideon's amber eyes flared with a sudden, dangerous light. He set his goblet down on a wooden table with a hard thud. "I did not ask for your opinion. I gave you a direct order. Take it off." When she hesitated, her hands trembling as they gripped the fabric of her skirt, Gideon stepped forward, his patience evaporating. "If you will not, I will." He reached out, his large fingers catching the thick, dark fabric of her veil. Rosalind gasped, instinctively stepping back, but he was too fast. With a swift, forceful tug, Gideon ripped the veil from her head. As the fabric tore away, two things happened simultaneously. First, the hidden pouch of wolfsbane and dried nettles snagged on the netting and tore open, scattering the strong-smelling herbs across the stone floor. Instantly, the masking scent vanished, replaced by the true, unadulterated scent of Rosalind. It hit Gideon like a physical blow: wild honey, rain-soaked earth, and the undeniable, intoxicating underlying musk of a dormant, powerful wolf. "Mate." The word screamed through his blood, his wolf clawing at his mind in sudden, frantic desperation. Second, the heavy gray fabric pooled at her feet, taking her dark cloak with it. Gideon froze, all the breath knocked from his lungs. He had expected melted skin, a ruined visage, a cowering, broken thing. Instead, bathed in the golden light of the hearth fire, stood the most breathtakingly beautiful woman he had ever seen. Waves of rich, mahogany brown hair cascaded down her shoulders. Her skin was flawless, resembling pale porcelain, her high cheekbones flushed with heat, but it was her eyes that pinned him in place. They were a striking, brilliant emerald green, devoid of any fear. Gideon stumbled back a half-step, his mind reeling. The scent, the face. She isn't human. She isn't scarred. What are you?" Gideon whispered, his voice vibrating with a primal rumble as his pupils blew wide, consuming the amber in a sea of black. The mate bond was surging through him, violent and possessive. Before he could step toward her to claim what his wolf recognized as theirs, a flash of silver caught the firelight. Rosalind moved with a speed that no ordinary human could possess. In a blur of motion, she closed the distance between them. Before Gideon's shocked mind could coordinate his massive frame to defend himself against his own mate, Rosalind pressed the edge of her silver stiletto directly against the pulse point of his throat. "I am the girl they locked in a tower to rot, Gideon Rutherford." Rosalind breathed, her emerald eyes blazing with years of suppressed fury. She didn't flinch as the heat of his skin radiated against her hand. "But if you think I came here to be your quiet little pawn, or to die for a father who despises me, you are gravely mistaken. Make one wrong move, Alpha, and I will show you exactly why they should have been afraid of me." Gideon stared down at her. The silver burned against his skin, a lethal threat, but all he could focus on was the intoxicating scent of his mate and the magnificent, fierce fire in her eyes. Slowly, inexplicably, a dark, dangerous smile spread across the Alpha King's face. Gideon's deep, rumbling laughter vibrated against the cold silver of the blade pressing into his throat. It was not a sound of mockery, but of genuine, predatory delight. The absolute audacity of this tiny, magnificent creature attempting to assassinate an Alpha King in his own bedchamber sent a thrilling jolt straight to his core. Before Rosalind could register the shift in his muscles, Gideon moved. His hand shot up, his fingers wrapping around her wrist like a vise of hot iron. He didn't twist or break her arm, but the sheer, overwhelming force of his grip paralyzed her nerves. The silver stiletto clattered uselessly onto the stone floor. With a swift, fluid motion, he spun her around, pressing her back against the heavy oak door. His massive frame trapped her completely, yet he took meticulous care not to let his full weight crush her. "You are fast," Gideon murmured, his face inches from hers. His amber eyes were now entirely swallowed by the dilated black of his pupils. "Faster than any human ought to be. But you are vastly outmatched in this territory, my beautiful, vicious queen." Rosalind struggled, her emerald eyes flashing with defiance. She expected him to strike her, to call for his guards, to drag her to the dungeons. Instead, he leaned in closer, burying his face in the crook of her neck. He inhaled deeply, a shudder tearing through his broad shoulders. "Wolfsbane and mothballs," he growled, his voice thick with an intoxicating mixture of lust and reverence. "A clever disguise crafted by fools. Did they really think they could hide you forever? Did you know what you were?" "I am Rosalind," she spat, her breath hitching as the searing heat of his body seeped through her thin dress. "I am a prisoner of your treaty. Nothing more." Gideon pulled back, framing her face with his large, calloused hands. His thumbs gently traced her high cheekbones. "You are no prisoner, and you are certainly no human. You are a wolf, Rosalind, a dormant one, suppressed by whatever poison your stepmother fed you. But a wolf nonetheless. My wolf recognizes yours. You are my mate." The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. "Mate." Rosalind's mind spun. She remembered the feverish heat she felt during the full moons. The unnatural sharpness of her hearing. The way she could see perfectly in the pitch black of her tower. She had thought it was a curse, a sickness of the mind, to hear the terrifying Wolf King of Oakhaven declare her his equal, his fated partner, shattered the foundation of her reality. Before she could process the revelation, heavy, frantic pounding echoed against the door behind her. "Alpha." Arthur Pendleton's voice was strained, completely devoid of his usual calm demeanor. "Forgive the intrusion, Alpha, but you must come to the Great Hall immediately. Lord Montgomery has arrived." Gideon's expression instantly morphed from fierce devotion to lethal rage. He stepped back, giving Rosalind room to breathe. "Montgomery," he practically spat the name. He was not summoned. He brought a warband of ironwood wolves, Alpha. Arthur continued through the thick wood. "He is demanding an audience with the High Council. He claims your marriage to a disfigured human invalidates your claim to the throne. He is invoking the right of purity." Rosalind watched Gideon's jaw clench. The right of purity was an ancient, barbaric law. If an Alpha's mate was deemed too weak to produce strong heirs, any rival lord could challenge the Alpha to a duel to the death, seizing both the pack and the territory. "They intend to depose you." Rosalind realized, the political machinations snapping into focus. "Because of me." Gideon looked down at the discarded gray veil on the floor. A dark, cunning intelligence gleamed in his eyes. He picked up the heavy, moth-eaten fabric and held it out to her. "Put it back on," Gideon commanded, his voice returning to the icy authority of a king. Rosalind recoiled. "You just tore it off me. You said I was your mate, and I will slaughter any man who looks at you twice," Gideon promised, his tone deadly serious. "But Montgomery thrives on arrogance. He thinks I am weakened. He thinks I am saddled with a helpless, broken human. I want him to believe he has the upper hand. I want him to step blindly into his own execution." He stepped closer, gently draping the heavy veil back over her head, plunging her world back into obscured shadows. "Walk behind me. Keep your head down. Let them mock you. And when I give the signal, my queen, you will show them exactly what they dragged out of the dark." The Great Hall of Oakhaven was a cauldron of tension. Hundreds of pack members lined the walls, their expressions grim. In the center of the room stood Lord Montgomery, a tall, sinewy man with cruel, calculating eyes and a smirk that promised violence. Behind him stood 20 of his fiercest ironwood warriors, their hands resting menacingly on the hilts of their swords. When the heavy wooden doors swung open, a hush fell over the crowd. Gideon strode in, his presence dominating the cavernous space. Behind him, small and pathetic in her drab, oversized garments and heavy mourning veil, walked Rosalind. Montgomery threw his head back and laughed a harsh, barking sound. "By the gods, Gideon. The rumors did not do the tragedy justice. Is that the creature you have bound to our sacred bloodline? A shuffling, faceless hag?" Gideon stopped a few paces from Montgomery, his posture relaxed but his muscles coiled like a striking viper. "You trespass in my hall. Montgomery, state your business before I have my guards throw you off the battlements. I am here to save Oakhaven from ruin," Montgomery declared, his voice booming so the entire hall could hear. "The law is clear. An Alpha King must have a queen of strength, of pure blood. You have tainted our lineage by binding yourself to human refuse. I invoke the right of purity. I challenge you for the crown, the pack, and the territory." Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. Arthur Pendleton stepped forward, his hand on his broadsword, but Gideon raised a single finger, halting him. "You invoke the right," Gideon said softly, a terrifyingly calm smile playing on his lips. "Very well. I accept," Montgomery sneered, drawing two jagged, serrated blades from his back. "When I kill you, I will throw your hideous bride to my hounds. You can certainly try," Gideon murmured. The fight began with explosive violence. Montgomery was fast, a blur of spinning steel and brutal strikes, but Gideon was a force of nature. He did not bother drawing a weapon. He parried Montgomery's blades with the thick leather bracers on his forearms, absorbing the blows before launching devastating counterattacks. The sound of flesh meeting bone echoed like cannon fire, but Montgomery was a coward. As Gideon lunged forward to deliver a crushing blow to the rival lord's chest, Montgomery whistled sharply. It was a trap. 5 Ironwood warriors who had been lingering near the back of the hall suddenly broke rank, sprinting not toward Gideon, but directly toward the veiled figure of Rosalind. They intended to murder the queen to permanently sever Gideon's mate bond, which would drive the Alpha into a crippling, agonizing madness mid-fight. "Rosalind!" Gideon roared, distracted for a fraction of a second. Montgomery used the opening to slash his serrated blade across Gideon's ribs. The sight of Gideon bleeding, the scent of her mate's blood hitting the air shattered something deep inside Rosalind's mind. The mental walls her stepmother had meticulously built over 15 years collapsed in a single, catastrophic instant. The heavy, suffocating scent of wolfsbane was instantly burned away by a surge of pure, unadulterated adrenaline. As the first Ironwood warrior raised his sword to cleave her veiled head from her shoulders, Rosalind didn't cower. She didn't reach for her stiletto. She screamed. It was not a human sound. It was a guttural, earth-shaking roar that vibrated the very stones of Oakhaven Castle. The heavy gray dress and the moth-eaten veil ripped to shreds as her bones rapidly broke and reformed. The sheer magical pressure in the room brought half the pack to their knees, where the small, drab woman had stood a second before. A colossal beast now remained. She was easily as large as Gideon's own wolf form, but her fur was a blinding, luminescent white, the unmistakable mark of the ancient, royal Winterborn pack. Thought to be extinct for a century, her emerald eyes burned with lethal intent. The Ironwood warriors froze in sheer terror. It was the last mistake they ever made. Rosalind moved with the devastating grace of an avalanche. Her massive jaws clamped shut on the first warrior's throat, tossing him aside like a broken doll. She swiped her massive, razor-sharp claws across the chest of the second, sending him flying across the hall. She was a hurricane of white fur and silver fury, protecting her territory, protecting her mate. Montgomery stared in absolute horror, his blade slipping from his trembling hands. "A Winterborn," he whispered, his face draining of all color. Impossible. They were all slaughtered. Gideon, ignoring the bleeding wound on his side, walked slowly toward the paralyzed rival lord. His eyes glowed a vibrant, lethal amber. "You came to my home. You insulted my mate, and you tried to cheat in a sacred duel." Gideon's hand shot out, grabbing Montgomery by the throat and lifting him entirely off the floor. "Consider your challenge failed," Gideon growled, before effortlessly snapping the traitor's neck. He dropped the lifeless body onto the cold stone. Silence descended upon the great hall, broken only by the heavy panting of the magnificent white direwolf, standing amidst the ruined bodies of the assassins. Slowly, the remaining Ironwood warriors dropped to their knees, exposing their throats in absolute submission. The Oakhaven pack followed immediately, bowing low. Gideon walked through the carnage, approaching the massive white wolf. He reached out, his bloody hand resting gently on her powerful snout. Rosalind leaned into his touch, a deep, rumbling purr vibrating in her chest. Archibald and Margaret Croft thought they had sent a monster to be destroyed. Instead, they had delivered the ultimate weapon into the hands of the Alpha King. The era of the hidden bastard was over. The reign of the White Queen had begun. Whispers of the ugly northern bride vanished, replaced by the legend of the White Wolf of Oakhaven. Rosalind transformed from a discarded pawn into a fierce Alpha Queen, her dormant power awakened by the unbreakable mate bond. Beside Gideon, she ruled the sprawling territories with unmatched strength and absolute justice. Those who once sought to break them learned a brutal truth: never underestimate the wrath of a deeply devoted sovereign.